Hello and welcome to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts. We are thrilled to have Ana De Orbegoso as tonight's guest speaker. Ana is a Peruvian-born artist based in New York and Lima. She has studied photography at SVA and Pratt, filmmaking at NYU, and painting at the Art Students League. Awards include Fellowship in Photography, New York Foundation for the Arts, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, Descubrimientos Foto España, First Biennial of Lima, and Enfoco New Works Award. Solo exhibitions include the Cervantes Institute New York, Museo de la Nación Lima, Fotonoviembre Tenerife, UC Davis Gorman Museum, Mirafoto Festival Peru, Bespoke Gallery, New York. Her work is in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, Lehigh Art Galleries, Pennsylvania, Museum of Art Lima, Enfoco Photographic Art Institute of Lima, Peruvian North American Cultural Institute Lima, Gorman Museum UC Davis, the Joaquim Paiva Collection at the Museum of Modern Art in Rio de Janeiro. Over the years, Ana has developed a wide-ranging practice and a richly experimental visual vocabulary. Her exploration, however, never strays far from the fundamentals of what it means to be human in a complex and contradictory world. So please help me welcome Ana De Orbegoso to our lecture series.
One of the recurring concepts in my work is identity. Existential, personal, social, cultural, historical. Identity through the use of popular iconography, popular imagery. Today I will present to you a few different projects. Together they make up a body of work that deals with historical memory. Most of them deals with the recovery of a memory, both personal and that of a community. And all of them deal with bringing history into our daily lives. Why is it important for me to remember history? Why is it important for me to bring it into my life? Since our personalities are constructed mainly from our past, and our past is the vertebra of our identity, then without individual memory, we literally lose our identity and don't know how to act in encounters with others. The way we perceive memories is how we construct our history and understand others. Collective memory is similar. Historical knowledge is no more and no less than carefully and critically constructed collective memory. Memory indeed makes us human. History, our collective memory, makes us social, sharing ideas and ideals. Each such group acts as it does, largely because of shared ideas and beliefs about the past and about what the past tells about the present and probable future. I have made it my personal quest to reconstruct the collective memory of my country. How did I get there? So let's start from the beginning when we create our new memories, our childhood memories. So I don't have photos of myself when I was a child, not with my parents, not with my brothers and sisters, nothing. I don't recall my face as a child. One day it hit me. I don't remember my childhood because I don't have any visual memoirs. This realization came with an emotional avalanche. Had I not been important to my parents? Why didn't they photograph me? Didn't they realize that photos were important to build up the family history? Was this emblematic of a disassociated family? I concluded that I didn't really exist. I was a ghost to my parents. I was undocumented. I didn't have a history. The pain that overtook me was unbearable. I had managed to block out my childhood almost completely. And with this realization, my childhood came back to haunt me. What should I do with these newfound feelings? I had to react. I had to create. I came up with a plan. If I didn't have a childhood album, I would create one. With this action, I started a process of reconstructing my history. I started asking friends and family to lend me their childhood photos. Amongst them, I chose some that represented situations I had also experienced. But since I was to recreate my memories, I decided that I could also create the experiences I would have wanted to have as a child, but didn't. I could have it all. I took portraits of my face with different expressions that would be appropriate with the situations depicted in the memoir photos. I used my adult face, the face that I always remembered, the face that I saw in the mirror every day, the only face I can recall. Hi, Varda. I then inserted my adult face into the childhood photos of my dreams and created my childhood album. Using as a base someone else's memories has enlarged my emotional dimension, not only to create my own memories, but to recall the ones of a loved one. Can you imagine I didn't have photos of my childhood? Yeah. So, with this series, I began to explore emotional healing processes through photography, creating Getting Closer, Acercándonos, a project created as part of an IFA fellowship, an art service of emotional healing through photography offered without charge to the community. This project's objective is to create a photograph of a memory you want to have. Many people, because of different reasons, like distance, budget, emotional conflict, etc., haven't been able to get together with their loved ones for a long time. This project proposes to reunite these people in a photograph, creating a new dimension, a new emotional reality, looking to bring up heart peace and peacefulness. So this photo is of people that I actually know that live in Peru. And the daughter of this woman, Agustina, she lives here in the States, and she wasn't able to travel to Peru. So it's been more than 10 years or more. And so I took this, the little kid is her daughter that went to Peru to get to know the grandmother. But the daughter itself of Agustina couldn't travel. It hasn't been able to travel till now. So what I did is I took this photo and then I changed the face of the other sister and put the one of Patty, which is the girl that lives here. And so this way she got to have a photo of her mother, and her child. It was the only way to put them all together. Then there's this other photo of another person from here, from New York, that this is her father, the mother, and her son, actually. But the father died, and she didn't have a photo with all the family and the son. So I changed her and put her in, and so now she has a photo of her loved ones. Come on in, please. So from there, we'll go to this other project, the Urban Virgins. But while our first memory is of our home, we are part of something bigger, a community, a people. So after I documented my own childhood, I looked a little deeper to my country. I had so much to explore. Not only was I personally undocumented, but my country was equally undocumented. Peru is a country that hasn't prided itself in looking at its past. It's like the thought about the past was numb. So what do I do with my country, I thought. How do I interact? How do I make it mine? How do I belong? Through my parents, I had learned to love the land and some of its culture, but that wasn't enough. Peru was wider than that, and I needed to know more about its variety and complexities. I'm going to give you a small view of Peru's demographics for you to understand my point. With time, I discovered some peculiarities. There was some numbness, some kind of lethargy in everybody's attitude towards national pride. Considering that Peru was the center of impressive ancient cultures, Mochica, Nazca, Paracas, and of the largest civilization in the Americas, the Inca Empire, not much representing it was around. Any iconography that was connected to the Incas was considered tacky. In fact, almost nobody talked about that culture except tourists. History books at school were very thin on ancient cultures. Most of Peru's population is mestizo, a mix of Spanish and Indian. White are only around 18%, but controlled everything. Nobody talked about discrimination. There was a silent racism. It's there, but we don't see it. Because it came so by default, prejudice was very strong. The conquest by the Spaniards for 300 years had been so brutal with the native population that it had managed to undermine the identity of a civilization that wasn't so unified to begin with. In 2001, Peru middle class was 25% of the population, poverty at 50%. Things hadn't changed too much since Peru got its independence. Having all the resources needed to be a successful country, money stayed with a few corrupt politicians in a small selected class. In the last 15 years, Peru has gone through an incredible transformation that no one thought would ever happen. The country is flourishing financially. Besides, finally, Peruvians found they had something in common when Peruvian food got its fame in the world. Peruvians now talk about food tete-a-tete with the French. This financial growth expanded to the shanty towns around Lima. The new generations of the shanty towns are now studying, sharing desks in school reserved before for the white class. Racism is not silent anymore, and the issue of indigenous mestizaje, mixed people, is talked about more openly. But this is the start, and with this, history has started to be remembered. According to many sociologists, art is said to be a mechanism to activate collective memory. For me, the recovery of historical memory was my way of dealing with these issues. I'm going to show you a short video of the project of the Urban Virgins. So around 2004, I started working on a project based on colonial paintings that had been growing in me for a few years. Baroque colonial paintings are part of the iconography that I saw around as a child growing up in Latin America. I was a bit scared by them at the beginning, as they are intense, but as an adult I got fascinated and decided to work with them. Even though they are historical objects, most colonial paintings have Catholic religious images. Most of Peru is Catholic, so whatever I did with them had to be very respectful. Religion is something you cannot take too lightly. In the typical manner of conquest, the Spanish ruler of the Americas utilized art as propaganda for their causes. From a contemporary view, these images remind us of the great advertising and political campaigns in which repetition and a single message get to communicate ideas to audiences of different ages and social conditions. So they painted religious scenes with all white characters and iconography that was from Spain. And they spread all over South America these paintings, which was their way of cementing the message of who was accepted and what cultural icons were valued. And then they went further. They taught all the local artists, the Indios, to paint in their style. Nothing of the local people, the local culture, the local color made it into these paintings. And these paintings were the only images around and lasted for hundreds of years, and they are still very prevalent. With my urban virgins, I decided to reclaim these images for Peruvians. I took the original paintings and substituted with Occidental faces instead of for Peruvian faces. And then I took out the Spanish iconography and put in Peruvian iconography from the different ancient cultures and from modern day Peru. You could say I'm using these paintings as propaganda also, like the conquerors did, except now it is as a way of reclaiming history. This propaganda is to send a completely different message. Instead of making the people fear and worship the outsider, these images are designed to make the locals proud of who they are and where they came from. The urban virgins are powerful, proud, and content figures who inhabit a world which incorporates the iconography and grandeur of both ancient and modern Peruvian culture. This project has taken a life of its own. It is continuously being exhibited around Peru's different regions. Until now, the urban virgins have visited around more than 31 locations among cities and towns around Peru. With each exhibit, the virgins printed on classic capes are worn by local artists who walk around the streets of the towns and archaeological sites, interacting with the population. This was my way to make sure that the virgins do not stay enclosed in a place of privilege, but are available to everyone. To this day, this project, it is the most locally exhibited art project in Peru. My reclamation of Peruvian women's history continued with my next project. The Last Inca Princess is what followed the urban virgins. It is also inspired by colonial paintings, but this time not religious paintings. This is a short experimental film based on a 17th century painting which depicts the wedding of an Inca princess to a Spanish captain and the emergence of their daughter, who represents the mestizaje, the new mixed people of Latin America. The wedding depicted in the painting was the culmination of one of the most terrible moments in Peruvian history, in Latin American history. In 1572, the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire of Peru, which began 30 years earlier, was nearly complete. The final pocket of resistance was defeated when the Emperor Inca Tupac Amaru I was captured and executed. As part of a surrender treaty, his niece was forced to marry the Spanish captain who had captured him. The end of the Inca Empire. 2 centuries later, the name of Tupac Amaru was taken by the leader of an unsuccessful rebellion against the Spanish crown. He too was captured and executed. The two Tupac Amaru survive as one in Peruvian popular memory. So in this piece, more than narrating the events from the painting, this film is a symbolic reinterpretation of them. With a contemporary perspective, my purpose was to give life to these characters, giving them emotions and intentions. The film explores the confrontation between two worlds, the imposition of one culture on the other, one race and gender over another. It is showing the use of women as trophies and legitimation tool for the appropriation and plunder. Beatriz Clara Coya, the Inca princess, represents the indigenous woman who accepts her fate with pride and resignation, knowing that the only way left is resistance and the purpose to keep on transmitting. To keep on transmitting generation to generation, her legacy, memory, and identity. But not everything is left in defeat. The mixed daughter of the conqueror and the princess personifies the modern, free Peruvian woman, aware of her past and its roots and able to decide her future. The last Inca princess led me to my next project. So what do we do with our history? This project is a questioning of how we interact with our iconography, our historical objects. How do those objects fit in our contemporary life? The object I chose to focus was the Huaco Retrato, which is a portrait ceramic. It's a piece of pottery from the Moche culture, which has quite realistic facial portraits on them. I was interested specifically in the portraits because it was the natural extension of photography. In photography, the portrait comes from the natural aspiration of man to perpetuate his appearance, to transcend. What I wanted to do was take ancient images and bring them into the present, take them out of the museums and books and make them a part of our daily modern life. So I deconstructed of the iconic image of the Mochica portrait and then reconstructed it in a way that I could relate to. I added different, current references which feel familiar, and with that created a new modern iconography. These are the original ceramics. And this is what I started deconstructing and constructing again. My first impulse was to put a face, a human face, directly in the ceramic, but after doing it on a few pieces, I decided to explore more. So once I created my new images, the new huacos, I decided to have them interact with old huacos. I got a residency at the Museo Larco, a beautiful museum that has the largest collection of these ceramics. I spent days in their storeroom getting intimate with the huacos and creating conversations. So in these last two pieces, I wanted to dress people with the ceramics in a way to feel them familiar, to feel the ceramics familiar, to feel history familiar. Even if we were not going to dress like this, you know, this was an exploration on how, what to do with them, you know, how to take them with you, you know. So these collages, I printed the pieces and then I cut them and put them together, you know, by hand. Then there's this, I started making conversations with them. And like in this second photo, the original ceramic is reflecting on the new piece. You know, with the concept that the past reflects on the future, and the future cannot exist without the past. These ceramics are like 2,000 years old. Then I made another piece, which is a projection on one of the objects, a 3D piece. And the installation looks like this. I'm just gonna show you. Then I created these other pieces. These are called actually photo carnet. And this is the, I don't know if we still use photo carnets right now, now that we have digital, But before your IDs, also had a photo and a seal. I still think that we still use that in some places. So what I did is I wanted to create an identity for these old ceramics, like to see history not just as objects, but to see it as that history was done by people like us, that and behind that ceramic there was a human person, no? And so I did these small photos. I created the seals with names of institutions of nowadays institutions of Peru, giving the ceramics a contemporary ID. This was actually the only white ceramic, the white face ceramic, and they still don't know exactly what it means. They feel that they think that it could have been a person painted in white for a ritual. And in this, these were the last pieces that I did with them. So I positioned them in the bookshelves where for me they mean history in the sense that we file history in these bookshelves, and there is where history stays. So my intention, is to take them out of these bookshelves, and I started making these conversations in the way of a comic, of a manga. So for the pieces to start, interacting, for the past to start interacting with the present. So to bring the old ceramics into the present, I also decided to put them in a modern context. So I put some of them as ID card photos, as I was telling you. So this way they could look as a familiar image to everyone. In this project, as well as in the Urban Virgins and the Last Inca Princess, I play with parallel times, mixing in codes of current popular iconography with the historical ones in order to give the modern audience a way to connect with the past through a familiar language. So what is my answer to the question, what do we do with our history? Reclaim it. Make it our own, bring it into our daily lives. All this questioning about reclaiming history and memory got me thinking about reclaiming the present through my work. I had been politically active in women's rights issues for much of my life and wanted to introduce it to the conversation in places that it wasn't expected. So I started putting together a series of images of women's marches and empowerment and took them to all kinds of places and started projecting them on buildings, on objects, and on human bodies. I took the images with me everywhere and made them a part of my daily life. So I believe that our most important tool to transcend is our past. Without the past, we wouldn't transcend. Without it, we wouldn't be nobody's son and daughter. We would have to start from scratch. And when we reconstruct the history of our community, we rebuild our own personal history. Thank you.
You know, I was very curious about the Urban Virgins project, and how do you keep a project like that going over the years and traveling to, you said, more than 30 destinations. And I was curious about the logistics of that, and also about the way it changes shape as it goes along the country, because it does morph into something else with each iteration.
Well, you know, at the beginning, I was taking the exhibit from place to place, and because besides putting it in a public space, you know, like a city hall or something or some other place that was not a gallery, actually, because I wanted people to feel free to go and see the exhibit. Parallel to this, there is you know, this performance that I partner with local artists, and we put it together. So at the beginning, as I was telling you, I was doing it by myself, and then I started finding some arts administrators that were interested in taking it to their own towns, and so that was the solution, you know, for it to make it flow and travel to different places, because if not, it would have taken me more time. So this is a way of doing, you know, to make culture alive, actually. And I had to go through the experience of putting the work in the hands of somebody else, you know, like giving your baby, you know, and make it grow. But that was the way to make it grow, because I think for artists, we feel that our work is our babies. And so it really was a hard step, but it was a very, very good step to, you know, to make this happen. Mm-hmm.
I noticed that sometimes the dancers come right up to the church and dance in front of the church. Is there any movement coming from the church out, or was there any response? Because in a way, you're replacing the virgins inside with the virgins, your new virgins outside. And I was just wondering if that provoked a reaction.
It hasn't provoked too much of a reaction, actually, just a few times, because these virgins actually are not virgins of adoration. It's regular, you know, women, like real women that build up a nation, that build up a land, a community. So I took care for the images to be very positive, because anyway they could be seen as religious objects still, even though I took them as historical objects. But I was very careful on that. So there was not to create an issue, you know, with them. Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to know how your latest work with Awacos is being received in Peru, in Lima, in the Museo Largo. I mean, you're changing the history, which is, to a lot of people, it's okay, and to a lot of people, it's a sacred image, right? The Awacos. So I'm just curious if you've had any kind of reaction about it in Lima or anywhere?
Well, actually, from all the works that I presented to you, the Huacos is the less confrontative. And what my purpose in this was a personal purpose that I had, which is to live with your historical objects, to live with your history. So I tried for the pieces to give a meaning of, to look familiar to us so in actual times, and not to be afraid of taking these pieces to your house. And the fact that that they are colored and they look like a beautiful contemporary ceramic, or they are plaqued in metal, in gold, silver, copper. Those are materials that are familiar to us, and so they confront in a way, but you also, you know, as everybody tells me, like everybody in Peru wants to have one. So that was the purpose, you know, of the work, that we wouldn't feel scared, you know, to confront history, because when we in Peru, when we confront history, we confront a lot of social issues, and nobody wants to remember history because of that. So I thought, we're not, why always remembering history in such a negative way? We have to have a positive approach to it. So so now with this treatment, let's say, I have a hidden agenda. So I know that everybody wants to take them home, which is true. Everybody wants to have one. But I have a hidden agenda, which is the moment you take the piece to your house and live with it, you're not going to see history the same way ever again. So you're going to let history come into your house, because history now is going to be seen through your glance, through these contemporary pieces. So yeah, that has been the reaction, actually.
The way that you put a contemporary face on history is amazing, and then the progression. But you're taking it off the street, and the way that you took it to the people in the streets. But with the objects, are you taking it back into the museum then? And when you say people are actually taking them home with them, are you mass producing these objects so that people can take them home with them?
Yes, I am mass producing them, especially the colored ones. I don't know if I showed a colored one. No, I didn't show a colored one, I think. Oh, because they were not photographs. That's right. Let me show you something. 1 second. So they are transparent or solid. They have different colors. And the fact that I took out the face is for the fact that now you can reflect on them. So it's you that is reflecting in history, and not necessarily history reflecting on you. So it's like you're capturing history through it. That was the intention, and it has worked. To my the thing is that when I did this work, I went through the experience of feeling every piece, because my questioning is the same questioning that any Peruvian has done. What do we do with it, you know? So so I went through the experience, and when I did these the objects, I got so excited, and hoping that really, you know, people will understand, will have my same understanding, you know, of history through them.
So you have talked about how Peruvians have been a little bit afraid to confront their past, or perhaps not interested at all in the, you know, we have the great Inca Empire, the all the cultures that, you know, came before. I'm curious about, because I think since the indigenous movement in the 50s or something in Peru, there haven't been any other artists that have the kind of work that you are presenting here. I'm not even talking about just your last one, but what you did with the urban virgins, you know, and then the process of going through the Inca princes to what you're presenting now is, I see a great evolution. I'm curious about the reaction of artists. I mean, are there followers, art critics, but mostly artists? Because I think you are doing something very unique in Peru as an artist.
Thank you, thank you. I feel that the new generation of artists is the one that is feeling inspired, because the new generation has come, is more, it hasn't been born with the weight of history, of the social meaning that history has for us. So I've seen some not copies, but I've seen that they're producing, they're using sort of some of the same images that I'm using, which is wonderful, because the pieces are there, you know, to be treated by everybody. So, and as we shared, you know, that same iconography, so it works great. I think that the idea is to use our iconography on us, you know, to live with it, you know, to put it in dresses and in shoes, or, you know, to put it in murals in our houses, you know, to take it everywhere, like some other countries that enjoy actually their history.
Thank you so much, Ana, for a great lecture.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Okay.